Well, everyone, welcome back. It is a crazy month of December, and we're just at the very beginning. Many of you have been wondering what the heck is going on with Express Entry. Why have there been no draws? And today, in this special live on a Friday afternoon in beautiful, snowy Alberta, where I'm broadcasting from, it's about 3 p.m. Mountain Time, and we are going to talk about what has just happened. Now, if you followed a lot of our live Q&As in the past, you've probably seen that Alicia and I have been speculating a ton about why the draws weren't happening. We're going to talk about that. But most importantly, I want to talk about what this means for you, what your plans are for the future, and how, if any, this alters the strategy that you are now looking at in terms of finding one of those precious spots for permanent residence in Canada. And don't get me wrong, if you've been listening to this guy at all, Minister Miller, you will know unequivocally that they have no intention of making room for all of you guys to have permanent residence in Canada if you're currently on a postgrad work permit. There just is not enough room. And I would argue that more than likely 75% of you will not have a pathway to permanent residence given everything that's transpired. We're going to talk about that today. All right. We're also going to talk about any questions really that you have about the Express Entry process, because as we've seen and as we'll talk about, there were 3 big rounds this week, big rounds. And so many people are asking, well, what is this going to have? How is this going to affect the cutoff? How's this going to affect, whether or not I have a shot? And we will definitely talk about that. And people are also asking, well, if I can't extend my work permit, what do I do? So keep your questions coming, fire them away, and we will definitely chat. But before we do anything else, it is now time to shift over and actually look at what has happened in the world of Express Entry. So if we go to the rounds of invitations, you will see just literally today, December the 8th, only hours ago, they finally did another STEM draw. There was only one previous STEM for, I think, a small 500 draw, but this was a big behemoth. So when many people were wondering what the heck is going on with STEM, I was asking it myself. Are STEM not important? We heard anecdotes of people struggling to find job in the tech industry, struggling to find work. But STEM isn't just tech. It includes other science, technology, engineering, mathematics. It includes all of those. So if you're one of those individuals who received a round of invitations under the STEM draw, I want to hear from you. How does that make you feel? Are you finally breathing a sigh of relief? And in fact, a lot of people are probably breathing sighs of relief because I'll be honest, when we did our live stream on Wednesday, I didn't think, you guys, that there was even going to be another draw for the rest of the year. I thought that maybe they were going to shut it down, that maybe they had enough room and they were going to leave it like that. But no, big, massive draw here. You can see 5,000, just about 6,000 invitations. But that's not all. Let's look at the previous rounds. French yesterday, 470 was the low CRS, 1,000 were extended. I've got some clients that were drawn here. This is the unique one, general. So I think sometimes because really, what's the difference between this general and this no program specified? Well, not a whole lot. However, with this general, some individuals did receive invitations that clearly stated which program they were drawn under. If we go to the general draw, which was, we had a big layaway of no draws for a number of weeks, all the way back to October, and now in December, we now have another draw. And finally, this big one, I think, caused a lot of people to breathe a sigh of relief that they were happening. But this is what you get when there are no draws. It literally skyrockets up. So 561, notwithstanding the number of invitations, were 4,750, which is still a pretty large draw comparatively. So you can see here, invitations to apply to the Federal Skilled Worker Program, CEC, Federal Skilled Trade Program, and PMP may be issued through this round of invitation. And they call it, like I said, they call it a general round. And if we go back to the previous list of draws here, and we go back to the last no program specified draw, this is where sometimes I can't figure out what the government's doing. no program specified draw, and then we look at the instructions here, it's all the same. So for whatever reason, they've, in their infinite wisdom, have decided that, you know, maybe now they're going to just call them general draws, just because it's, I don't know, more inclusive versus exclusionary. I don't know. But you can see what's happened here. So we've got 5, just about 6,000, 10,000, 11, just about 12,000 invitations that were issued overall. And you can see the scores have still remained quite high. So the question becomes, after we have these rounds of invitations, I'm going to go back a couple here, and I'm going to get right back to the main screen. One more here, express entry invitations. The curious thing is what the world looked like immediately after each of these draws. Now, unless you actually took a screenshot, you wouldn't be able to see how the rounds of invitations, who's sitting in the pool, and the distribution. So every time there's a new round of invitations, they tend to update this. But you can see this was last updated December the 5th. So if we go back to the previous rounds of invitations, you can see here when we go back, that is how many were in the pool before December 6th, 7th, and 8th, before any of this happened. So at the time in which this general draw occurred, this is what the world looked like. Oh, I went to the actual ministry instructions. Let's go back to the main screen here. One more right there. So this is the way the candidate situation looked like. And you can see how many individuals, over 600. And how do you get 600 points? Well, you could have potentially, I guess, a nomination. Obviously, anyone over here that has over 600 points has a nomination from a province. Now, ultimately, that's not inclusive of only PNP holders. Over 600 points, people could attain that with a job offer for an executive 00 knock, right? Who have received an extra 200 points. There's French language that could also push people up if they also had job offers and they also had, you know, maximum English scores. You know, it's possible to kind of creep up a little bit to that point as well. But yeah, it's super, super, super competitive. And so you can see with that general draw that we had, so this one here is the stem. And if we went back to the general draw right here, you can see 4,750 people, 561 CRS was the highest ranking. So that means, subject to those who had French language and those that were STEM right here, who are still 481, 470, there is still a ton of people that are above 500 that did not receive an invitation to apply. So when you look at the actual levels plans here, so this is for 2023 to 2025, you can see their target is 465 generally. And for the federal high skilled, which is what we're dealing with here, 82,880 is what they were shooting for, but they could go as high as 88,000. So we'll see how that plays out. And then it jumps to 109. But it also includes, in part, some of these provincial nominee program individuals. Now remember, not all of these PNPs are going to go through express entry. So a number of these are going to go through the regular streams that are not caught by express entry and the number of individuals that are being granted invitations. So it's not caught by that. So it's this whole exercise, the reason that we're even doing it right now is just to give you a little bit of an idea of what has just transpired. Now, some of you will probably wonder, and I welcome, like I said, I welcome your questions to be posted. What does the future hold for me, and what options do I have? And let's give a few shout outs as we jump to that in just a second here. So like I said, any questions that you have, just don't hesitate to drop them. So Pragya says, can we expect CRS 500 cutoff soon? Well, that's a good question. Let's jump back here to our list and we could see. So if 561 was the actual cutoff for the general draw, we knew that some of these people below 500 are obviously French language proficient, and some of them are STEM. There's going to be far fewer that piled in after the December 6th draw that were putting their profiles in. There was going to be far fewer than we typically would see, for example, going from the 26th all the way to the 6th. So that's what causes the scores to go up. But the individuals that are still going to be in there, STEM occupations is fairly restrictive. So once again, we still have a bunch of people that are above 481, above 470, that still are waiting because they don't fit into one of these specialized draws. All right, let's just jump back here for a second. So when we're looking at questions like that, will the CRS cutoff 500 come soon? Well, I keep flipping here, but let's go back once again and look at the actual who was sitting in the pool at the time in which the round of invitation occurred. So, and all we have to go off of, you guys, here is what was in the pool as of December 5th. So like we said, of these individuals, we know that some of these were pulled out in the general draw, okay? But there's still a bunch of people at the 500, basically 500, and I think it was 56 and lower in here, that didn't receive an invitation in the big general draw. So will it come down to 500? Well, ultimately, if they were to do another one next week, I think if they were to do another one next week, it's possible that the round of invitations, that it could start to creep down. But to get below 500, I think we're going to need a larger draws for that to happen. Okay. Let's see what else we've got here. We've got Spider-Man. Says Spidey saying hi from Van Cleek Hill. Hello, my friend. I hope things work out. Yeah, I hope things work out for you. Starbucks Girl, we've got you. Hello, good to see you as well. And for those of you who are tuning in, one of the things that I want to talk about as we're going through this rundown, there's a couple very positive things that have happened. And one of the things that have happened from this crazy round of invitations in December is that we now know that more than likely the reason that they didn't do rounds of invitations wasn't because they were reaching a cap or they were going to slow down in the issuance of them, but it was more attributed to technical problems within the portal itself. And it's just amazed me. It's absolutely amazed me how much money our previous ministers here have dumped into modernizing our portals and the application systems, only to see the level of problems that we're experiencing now. And one of the things that's so frustrating is that they will release these new portals, or they will make changes like the whole postal code issue in the portal, the Express Entry portal, and then not adequately test it out before it's released. Like, I just don't understand. It's almost like they're allowing you and me to be the beta testers of their systems when they do some new release or new updates to the system. But it is unbelievably disappointing. And like I said before, I think Minister Miller, heads need to roll. Like, you need to clean house and get some people in there that know what they're doing. And I've said this before, that there are many situations where, even the clients that I see coming through that are just brilliant engineers, programmers that retain me to help them with their Express Entry applications. I'm positive that I could round up a handful of my clients, task them with the responsibility of cleaning this up, and they'd have it done in like a month. I know I said a day before, but that's probably a little bit crazy. And then how many millions and millions of dollars have been applied from the budget to get these systems working, and they're just not. And so one of the reasons that we had such a delay and such a gap between the rounds of invitations from October all the way until this week, December 6th, is largely because of problems with the portal. And there were a number of messages that were being sent out for people who were running out of time to submit their applications and couldn't submit them because of glitches with dependents, and there's a whole host of issues. And so we would get an indication that, okay, you can file, we will give you a longer period of time as we work out these glitches, more than the 60 days that we originally had granted to you. And so some days those notifications didn't come out until after the clients had felt that they lost their opportunity. And so many of them were freaking out thinking, oh my goodness, I can't file it. My ITA, I only have 60 days. The time is running out. And but the government just kept extending it so that individuals would not fall out. But the communication was just horrible. Really, really bad. Really bad. All right. We've got Clark Kent, who's tuning in from Mississauga. Great to have you here, Clark. Jay says, are we expecting more STEM or an OI&P tech draw? Yeah. Although this round of invitation here for tech for STEM with an Express Entry was large, the reality is they expect to continue doing more of these in the future. So my answer always is yes for every province. Now, in fairness, there's a number of people that are currently laid off. The industry is a little bit soft, but going forward in the tech side, going forward, understand that this is something that's a priority. So they're not going to back away from this. Now, next year, they have the ability to revisit this and determine what they want to make, on the list of category-based draws. Minister Miller here can make decisions to change up whatever he wants to. But the intention is to let it run a year, assess things, and then report to cabinet on what happened and why they made the selections in terms of category-based draws that they did. So I'm going to have to answer yes to that, Jay. Okay. Okay, here's a good question. This one's from Varun. He says, what would be your guidance for people moving to Canada on the H-1B open work permit? How can they get into the express entry path? Do they need to get work experience in Canada before applying for express entry? Well, Varun, everything is based on human capital. And one of the things that I spend a lot of time teaching people in my express entry course right here is exactly that, strategizing what it takes to qualify, how immigration looks at you as a potential candidate. Obviously, express entry is heavily based on human capital, but that's not all. And so when you ask questions like this, which is, do you need to work, in order to be able to get access to it? Well, when we look at the actual rounds of invitations and we see how high the scores are that are necessary in order for you to be able to even get an invitation to apply, it is so crazy high. And so if we look at the rounds of invitations, and just to put things into context, and this is something else that I cover in my course. Actually, if you go into, I'm going to back up here. So if you go into the landing page that I have here, and just to remind you guys, in 10 days, I have my next master class, which is chock full of basically a solid 4 days, 1 hour each day of you coming in and asking me anything in addition to all of this, almost 10 hours or even more than 10 hours of content that walks you through every step of the process. But right here in Module 1, I have a CRS case scenarios. And this situation right here breaks down the question that you're asking. And what does it look like? What does it take to be able to get through express entry? As an open work permit holder, you're at a little bit of a disadvantage compared to someone who's on a work permit that actually names their employer specific. So if you're on a labor market impact assessment in Canada and your position is at a tier 3 or higher, well, when I say higher, 3, 2, 1, and up, skilled positions, you have the ability of getting those extra 50 points for an arranged offer of employment, or up to 200 if you're in a 00, VP kind of C-suite level position. So in that situation, those points are absolutely critical. But what's happened over the years, Varun, is that there's been so many people who didn't meet the threshold, to get that ITA when they're outside of Canada. So what do? You apply to study in Canada, you try to find a job offer to work in Canada, get experience, and then help through not just your human capital, but your experience in Canada, those points to be able to push you over the top, to be able to get those invitations to apply and to distinguish you from all the other candidates. But what we've seen lately is that as all of these waves and waves and waves of international students, like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of international students who go to school, complete their studies, get extra points for studies, then go on, get a postgrad work permit and work for a year, get an extra 35 or 40 points for that, maybe work another year, get another 10 points, maybe work another year, get another 10 points because of the fact there hasn't been any CEC only draws. And so all these individuals are continuing to increase their points and push up and up and up and up that pass mark where they set the round of invitations, because the competition is so fierce. And then layered on top of all of that, you guys, is the French-speaking bonus points. And I'm not even talking about siblings in Canada or things like that where you get a few 15 points. We're talking massive points for French language. And so when individuals who have French now are starting to apply and submit applications and realize Canada is a pretty sweet place, they're getting priority, which is pushing everybody else down. So as an H-1B work permit holder, the first thing that I will tell you is do not go to any province where there are high volumes of post-grad work permit holders who are working, because you're going to be in the same category as them as an open work permit holder. Now, some open work permits, like the Quet Canada-Ukraine authorization for emergency travel, that visa and the accompanying work permit, some provinces like Alberta do allow them to apply through their non-express entry streams. But other open work permit holders, like spousal open work permit holders, H-1B open work permit holders, even some employer-specific work permits like reciprocal, it's a separate type of work permit that's employer-specific, are not eligible to go through Alberta's non-express entry stream, the Alberta Opportunity Stream. So you need to pay very close attention to where people are going, and don't go there. Don't go there. Choose a province where it is less competitive, because once you're in a province, it's very hard to move. Provinces are constantly looking at whether or not individuals are going to stay if they nominate them. And one of the indicators that suggests they may not is if they started out in a different province and have all their ties, their friends, their relationships in that province. And then if you try to move to another province just to get the nomination, they're starting to get very wise to the fact that people normally don't want to stay. A classic example of this on a micro level is the Rural Northern Immigration Program. Now, my good friend is no longer running the Claresholm program in Alberta, but one of the things that really opened my eyes was the fact that he said they don't even like necessarily to nominate people who were up in Calgary, who drove the little over an hour down to Claresholm to work, because they felt as soon as they nominated them, or at least expressed to the Rural Northern Immigration pilot they supported their permanent residence, that the evidence was on, right in front of them. As soon as they got nominated, they just went back to Calgary. So even in the same province, going from a city to a rural area, those rural Northern Immigration Program communities are really questioning whether or not they want to nominate someone who already has experience or has ties somewhere else, even in the same province. So they said they actually like people outside of Canada coming who had no contact or no connection with anyone in Canada, because then they built all their ties and their experiences and their relationships in that community, and they were more likely to stay. So once again, to summarize all of this, it's really important that if you are on an open work permit, especially an H-1B open work permit, that unless you've got a really phenomenal job and that employer is willing to secure a labor market impact assessment for you, which is separate, it's kind of like your H-1B in the US actually. If they're willing to apply for a labor market impact assessment for you, then that can put you in a different category if you choose to go to, say, Ontario and British Columbia. But the reality is, if that's not the case, then please consider one of the other provinces where the competition isn't so fierce. And I've also told people how much I like the Atlantic provinces because they have not only express entry, not only each provincial nominee program for each of the 4 provinces, but they have the Atlantic Immigration Program, which gives you potentially 3 different options. And why do I like the Atlantic Immigration Program? Well, it doesn't require an LMIA. It requires that the employer be designated and that they support you in your efforts to settle and get established and make a solid connection with the province that you're actually working in. But things like age are not as big of a deal, where you're losing those points for express entry. And in many cases, language isn't as fiercely competitive either. So when you're on an H-1B in the US, often you guys are older. So when you go there and say you go to Ontario and you're trying to compete, you're pretty much locked into express entry and human capital points, even with those extra 35 or 40 points for having worked for a year. You're not getting any job offer points. And so once again, you're going to get there, you're going to work for 3 years and nothing will change. And remember, once you turn 30, you start to lose 5 points for every year. And as I've indicated repeatedly, all of this stuff is covered in my comprehensive course. And after you've gone through all the lessons, all the modules, roughly every month, but it's going to be December the 18th to the 21st, for 1 hour every day, I will be there to answer any additional questions that you have, any confusion you have, and it's all included in the price of the course, which if I log in here in Alberta and pull it up, it's $364.35 US for access to the course. And here's the kicker. With the course, you have unlimited access to it, including any updates. And yes, now I need to go in and re-record the videos because now they're asking for postal codes. It's not a big deal, but I still want all of the content in the course to be completely current and updated. And so you'll have access to all of that for life, as well as any future masterclasses that I have. You can always come back again and again and again. So it is a tremendous, tremendous opportunity to get lots of interaction directly with me. I created the course and within the masterclasses. Okay, let's see who else we've got here and some of the other questions. And we're really focusing, guys, on express entry. Okay, Haiti says, hey, Mark, finally, we're waiting now for our COPR. It has been 2 weeks now, though, since we submitted our pics and confirmed our address in the portal. Should we submit a web form now? Haiti, it just takes a long time. If you want to, you can, but the portal is just a mess and everybody is being delayed. Okay, let's see here. Okay, we've got Varun, who's over on LinkedIn. He says, hey, Mark, got my police clearance certificate 6 months back, and I haven't left the country from the date received the PCC. I received ITA today. Can I submit the same PCC? Okay, so just to clarify, if you received your police clearance certificate in the country in which you live currently, it's only valid for 6 months. Okay, so if you obtained it over 6 months ago and you obtained it while you're in that country, or it's the country in which you currently live, then understand you're going to need to get a new police clearance certificate. If, however, you were not in that country, you were in Canada and you applied for the police clearance certificate, it could be a year old and it doesn't matter because essentially you weren't in the country when it was issued and you have not returned to the country since it was issued, which means it's hard to commit a crime in a country. Well, it's possible, but generally speaking, it's pretty hard to commit a crime in a country when you have never set foot in that country since the police clearance was issued. Great question, Varun. Once again, something covered in the course. Okay, Wallace says, please, can you talk about the new Ukraine application? I will pull Igor in and we will chat about that in an upcoming video. But for this one, we're going to really focus on the express entry and this crazy December rounds of invitation. So that's what we're going to focus on today, okay? All right, let's see what else we have here. Haiti says, yes, thanks for the Express Entry Masterclass. That really helped a lot with our document preparation. I highly recommend it. Thanks, Haiti. It's so great, when people who subscribe to the course, and she's talking about this one here, and it's in the description in the video, you can click and subscribe. But when people take this course, it's literally like they become a family. And what is the purpose of it, right, Haiti? The purpose is to save you guys time, to make sure that you're not wasting your time reviewing all this information out in internet land that might be outdated, that may not be correct anymore, that's just wrong. And we know very well that express entry, the government has done everything they can to say you can do it yourself. You have all the information you need to file the application, and you don't need to hire someone to help you. And the reality is, many people go through the process without ever hiring me directly as their immigration lawyer. A lot of people do hire me, and that's totally cool. But the course is specifically designed for you DIYers who want to maintain control over your own application, but value the assistance of a lawyer who is teaching you everything that you need to know to be successful in your application. So it's all about accuracy, efficiency, and just speed. And so in all honesty, I'm going to change the name of this to the Express Entry Accelerator Program, because that's really what it is. It's all about getting you guys in place so that you can file your applications in a way that you're not going to have to lose sleep at night wondering if you've got something correct. And the best part always of the courses is the fact that you can come and you can ask me if there's anything that's uncertain or you're not quite sure because your situation is really specific. This is where you can ask me, versus when we're doing the live Q&A, for example, each day, I just can't get into specifics in the way that I can within the course. So I very, very much appreciate, Haiti, your shout out. And I love when people jump in and offer testimonials. So if you haven't subscribed, do it, because you can then start going through all the course material. And then when on the 18th, when we do our next masterclass, and it's really just a big, massive Q&A where you can answer questions and ask questions and get answers. And there's also a community group where everybody just connects in, and questions can be posted there if someone can't make the live stream, and I answer every single question. And yeah, it's awesome. Okay, let's see what else here. Papool says, hey, Mark, the EECRS score is becoming so scary high. Is there any possibility the CRS score will decrease like 2021 level? Okay, so what Papool here is talking about is the crazy days during the pandemic when the borders were really closed. And during that time, I was serving on the national executive. I spent some time as the national chair of the Canadian Bar Association immigration section. I had many meetings with immigration. It seemed like every week, every 2 weeks, we'd have calls with them to talk about the border restrictions, the orders in council, the restrictions on who could come, who couldn't come. But for many months, the borders were closed. And our Liberal government was very keen on hitting their levels targets, and that's right here. And so when they say that they want to hit 465,000, they realized after the pandemic hit that they weren't going to reach it. And so what they did, because these numbers right here were really low for the federal high skilled, what they did was they did a special draw. And if I'm to go here, I wonder if I can filter, was it 176? Let's see if I can guess right. Nice. Draw 176 back on February the 13th of 2021. They did the Canadian experience class only. So that's why, because people outside Canada weren't able to come in. So anyone, virtually anyone that had a profile in the pool, no matter how low, and you can see the lowest score was actually 75. Okay, just to put this into context, with 75, you didn't need any education. Like, I don't even think you needed to indicate high school. Like the very bare minimum, you needed your language test. And yeah, I can't even begin to tell you how I did a special episode on showing the very lowest possible score someone could do and still qualify for the Canadian experience class. I think it was like 67 or 68. But yeah, 75 was the lowest ranked individual given an ITA, and they extended it to 27,332. And this draw, February 13th, was like a Saturday. It was crazy world. So this is basically what Papool is asking. Are they going to drop down to those levels? Well, there was a reason that it dropped down to that stage, because they had they were drastically trying to get enough people to meet their levels targets. And so they had to be creative. And I remember I had a discussion with not Minister Miller, not Minister Fraser, but Minister Mendicino, who was the minister at the time when the pandemic was in full swing in 2021. In fact, I appeared before the Standing Committee on Immigration to offer my thoughts and suggestions on what was happening with with immigration and the effects of the pandemic on the individuals themselves. And so that was back, I think, in the fall of 2021. I appeared before the Standing Committee government in Ottawa. I appeared virtually, obviously, because of the pandemic. And so I'll be honest, I really don't think that that's going to happen. The scores are going to continue to remain quite high until everybody in Canada gets flushed out. And this is probably something that makes sense to talk about to you guys. You know that this character here, Minister Fraser, who's now over housing, which, boy, he's got a mess he's got to clean up now with the lack of housing in Canada. But Minister Fraser continually heralded how important international students were for our permanent residence programs in Canada, because they'd come, they spoke English fluently, they obtained Canadian education, they were ripe and primed to transition to postgrad work permits, take the best and brightest jobs, and really integrate the best into Canadian society. Well, flash forward, now Minister Miller, who replaced Minister Fraser here, has basically said there are no guarantees, and he has reiterated that repeatedly. And when you look at the number of postgrad work permit holders right now trying to find pathways to permanent residence in Canada, it is really scary. And the number of new students still piling in, although this guy, Minister Miller right here, has announced some new changes to make it way more difficult to get a study permit. So the changes, they've put in under the guise of, well, you need to have enough money to support yourself, and school's expensive. And so we're going to ratchet up the minimum requirements, which is kind of code for, well, let me slide back here to my courses here. I want to point out to everybody, and Minister will just drop you off of here. My immigration courses are not just express entry, but they also include another course here on study permit application. So here's the interesting thing. These new changes are going to kick in January. So those of you who are not expecting, to have to come up with, I don't know, tens of thousands of dollars more than you currently are when you apply, now's the time to get your applications in as quickly as possible. And I'll be honest, they could very well start to apply some of those higher standards anyways when they're adjudicating the study permits. And so what is the master plan for this fellow right here, Minister Miller? It's really not so much protecting students and making sure they have income to support themselves in Canada, which is really important. It's to reduce the numbers that come in, flat out. They realize that they've allowed in too many international students who then become postgrad work permit holders, who are then looking for opportunities to stay permanently. And there's nothing wrong with that. All of that is legitimate. It's wonderful. It's good for our country. But the volumes in which they allowed people in really have put a strain on all kinds of things in Canada. And so that's now what Minister Miller is now having to try to sort out and clean up, right? And so I feel for you guys. I really do. But if you're looking to apply in Canada, like this study permit course is equal to my express entry one. It is also just chock full of just about everything that you would need in order to be successful with your study permit application. And the lesson covers just about everything that you could imagine. There's templates on building your study plans. There's walkthroughs on how to complete either of the pathways for study permits, whether you're going through the IRCC portal or whether you're going through the IRCC secure account. Either of those, I've got detailed explanations on how to do all of that, and that's in the study permit course. Why do I do this? Well, it's pretty simple, because as a firm, we can only take so many clients, and that's why we charge what we do, because you work directly with me, you work directly with Alicia, with Igor, and so there's no middle people. And I don't leverage 10,000 paralegals or consultants or law clerks or legal assistants. I don't use that model. You work directly with me because I'm the one that has the experience and the knowledge. And then I teach you how to put your own information in your own forms. And then we review everything forensically to the point where we look at all the documents. We even upload and submit your application together through a Zoom screen share. And that's how I work with my clients. But I created these programs so that I could amplify the ability that I have to help as many people as possible. So that's where the study permits. I have a spousal sponsorship course, express entry, of course, with the masterclass coming December 18th to the 21st. So I just want to remind people about that because I haven't done a lot of talking about it. And I'm finding that many, many people are coming back after and saying, I didn't know you had a course. I didn't know you had those other resources. And every one of our clients actually go through the course material, because I want my client to know as much about express entry by the time they get to the end, when they're ready to submit, as I do. Because when you have two people that know what the heck they're doing, nothing gets missed. And that's part of the way I can leverage with the master classes, is to answer any of those little questions. And the cool thing about the master classes for express entry is the fact that when people ask questions, other people benefit from those questions. Just like you guys here who are watching live right now. You have the ability to ask a question that maybe 4 other people are interested in, and I jump on when I answer your question. Everybody benefits. And another cool part about it is the fact that some people, they tell me repeatedly, man, I didn't even know that that was a problem until so-and-so, this other student, asked the question. So just by being there and listening to the question, just like all of you here, which is crazy, right? That so many people would be watching a live stream right now where we talk about so many different things, but you learn from the questions other people ask. So that is, that's something to keep in mind. So if you hadn't subscribed to it, please do. Okay. Okay, and then Hassan asks a question that falls directly right into the material that I cover in the course. So Hassan says, after receiving a provincial nominee program, a nomination, what are the required documents to apply after receiving an ITA from outside Canada? Well, Hassan, it's all the same documents that are required or included in any express entry application. So if you are going through, and you've received an invitation to apply, Hassan, I would strongly, strongly encourage you to subscribe to the course. But if you want to know what documents, well, let's just take a look and I'll show you. Actually, let me go back here to the right course here. So if I go to the Express Entry and I open it up, if you want to know what documents, an easy thing, I can list them off right here, because Module 6 is all about the documents. In fact, I have an individual lesson that covers every single aspect of the process, all the way through every document that could be required. So passports, medicals, police certificates, your educational credential assessments, your records of employment, which include reference letters, pay slips, pay stubs, those kinds of things. Some people have an offer of employment from an employer. I don't use, information on use of representatives. I include it. But people often don't require that because they're filing their own. Digital photos, birth certificates for the kids if you have kids, proof of sibling relationship if you're claiming points for that, proof of funds, marriage certificates. Have you changed your name? Your IELTS or your CELPIP results. We have the educational credential assessments here. Letters of explanation, which are the gravy on the mashed potatoes, if I use a Canadian reference. This is what helps to really solidify all of the answers in your application. Sometimes there's questions that are asked where you just don't know what the government's looking for. And you answer it one way, you may have answered it wrong. And so a letter of explanation allows you to explain to the officer, well, hey, I don't know exactly why you're asking this question. I interpreted it this way. And so that's why I answered it this way, in case you were wondering. So it's just tremendously powerful. And then, of course, PNPs. And then there was a time when non-accompanying spouses, people used to do that all the time to be able to score just enough points to get those ITAs. But so I have a separate section on how to complete it, the EAPR portion, if you have a spouse that's non-accompanying. So these are just an example of all of the lessons, the individual lessons and everything that's covered within them. But wow. There's a lot of people who now have received invitations to apply that could benefit from the course in this crazy December round of invitations. All right, so that's it, Hassan, but congratulations to you. I'm so excited if you've got one of those ITAs. Oh, Batman's back. Good to see you there. There's always a light at the end of the tunnel. IRCC back with the boom, 3 back-to-back draws, and you bet we'll give a little applause here. Great comment, Batman. Okay. Sarah says, I think I am a Canadian citizen. Do you think it's a good idea that I sponsor my cousin for education in Canada? Well, you can if you want to. Ultimately, understand that the funds are going to be higher, but it's something that, that is possible. Okay, classic example here, Adil. Yes, Adil, yes. I'm a family physician and my CRS score is 448. Which province is the best to apply while creating Express Entry file? So understand that when it comes to, if you're outside of Canada, Adil, and you're applying to come in, you fit within the healthcare dross. And so if we go to the ministerial instructions again here, I'll just flip back to my screen. You'll see that under the occupations here is healthcare. And they just did one on October 26th. And what was the score? 431. So you, as you indicate right here, if I can jump back to the right section here, you say you've got a score of 448. So if you had your profile in the pool, Adil, and you're a family physician, you should have received an invitation to apply. So I'm not sure if that was the case, if you did, or if maybe you haven't got your application in. Subscribe to the course, follow the lessons, and you can learn exactly how to do it without making those critical mistakes that cause people to get their applications rejected. But yeah, that's what I encourage you, Adil, to follow that path. Now, in terms of which province is the best to apply while creating Express Entry file, well, I always like provinces where, where there are fewer candidates, where there are fewer people vying for those same spots. But in your case, Adil, it looks to me like with 448, you're in the range where if they continue to do healthcare occupations, that you are going to have a chance to be drawn on, in that targeted draw. So, and as always, remember, you guys, I think you guys understand that I'm a Canadian immigration lawyer, and Canadian Immigration Institute is just one aspect of how we do and assist people, how we turn out all of our free content and answering questions. It's a Friday, and I'm here just trying to help where I can. But if you go back here and you look at our website, Holthe Immigration Law, you will see, you'll see here that you can click on speak to a lawyer and you can book a direct consult. So when I'm looking at your situation, Adil here, you can easily book a consult with us and get all of your strategy in place to know exactly what needs to happen. Because ultimately for me, it's difficult to tell you exactly where to go or what to do unless I know a whole lot more information about you. So I strongly encourage you to book a consult. And unlike a lot of firms that are shutting down for Christmas, this is some of our busiest time because I know that people just stop helping. They take holidays and shut things down the last 2 weeks of December. Well, for us and our firm, we actually ramp it up in December. That's when we open up our coffers. That's when we open up our time slots for consultations. And it's the busiest month for our firm because we know other people are just not available. There's so many things that happen and people desperately need assistance, but a lot of consultants and lawyers take that time off. And rightly so, I get it. But that's when we really put ourselves out there to help people, is right through the last couple, especially the last couple weeks of December. Okay. Okay, Nalini asks a good question. She says, hello, Mark, I work as an infection. I'm just going to get a drink here. Okay. She says, I work as infection prevention and control specialist in a health unit, but in IRCC, not code, it's required to be an RN. That's right. My job description doesn't require to be a nurse. Same title though. Yep, that happens, Nalini. And in that case, unless you meet the main duties, a substantial number of those main duties for a nurse, you can't qualify through the healthcare. You can't qualify as a registered nurse, and you have to fit within a NOC code that doesn't align with that. And so that's just the way it is. And I'm not sure within the work, the work that you're doing, that your occupation fits within one of the other NOCs available in one of the healthcare draws. I'm not sure about that. Hey, Henry, good to see you from Niger. Thanks for connecting in. Yes, Henry, the STEM draw was huge, yet I still didn't get an ITA. CRS 470, lost 5 points due to age. Hang in there, my friend. Hang in there, Henry. So close, so close. Aniela says, even though I'm a permanent resident, hey, she says, thank you to one of your courses. I'm still watching your videos. Thank you for helping us updated and informed. Hey, it's so great to reconnect. Man, I love when past students of the courses and past clients come back and say hello. It really means a lot. So thank you, Aniela. It's absolutely fantastic to hear from you. And thanks for the shout out about the courses, because I'll be honest, lots of people look at this when I'm talking about my courses and they're like, well, all that information is for free online. Well, I can tell you it is most definitely not. And I'm not even talking about the 4 hours that you get with me to answer your specific questions. But man, it breaks my heart when I see people who file their applications. They're just little tiny things maybe that they weren't aware of, and it causes their application to get rejected. And the problem with express entry is how absolutely volatile it is. So when we look at these rounds of invitations here and we see how high they are, okay? And if we go back, let's go back quite a ways, okay? Let's go back to 2021. If you were someone in 2021 in Canada and you're looking at these rounds of invitations, you can see 380, 368, 357, you're thinking, oh, I've got lots of time. There's no problem. If I get, I have a CRS of 400 points. So if I get my application, refused because it's incomplete, because I made a little mistake, no biggie, right? It's not a problem at all. Well, that is absolutely not the case. So look and see what happens here. So we'll go, so this is draw 199. Let's go back and let's keep going down here and see what happens to the score. So August the 5th, there was 404. The 19th was 403. And then do you see what happens here? September the 14th, 462. They did a smaller draw, September 14th, 2021. And so let's say you submitted your application, and actually let's say it was here, August the 19th, you were drawn, you made a mistake, your application gets returned. Well, let's see what happens. Watch. Do you see this? PNPs, PNPs, PNPs. And then if we go to the next round here, Provincial nominee, June 22nd. And then look at this. No program specified draws. Do you see how high the scores are? 500, 500. And so if you were an individual who was in this situation here, August the 4th, 2020, let's see, we could go back here. Actually, I'll go back to the third one. Okay, here. So if you're the individual right at the bottom here who was drawn in this August the 5th draw at basically, let's say you had 405 points and you made a mistake and your application was returned for being incomplete, these individuals, their opportunity is gone. History. It will never come again. And as you've watched the scores and you can see even more recently here, unless a person fits within one of these occupation-specific draws or the French draws, the scores are never dropping below 400. Like trade, it dropped below that because it's trade occupations. And if you don't have in transport, even transport was above 400. So you can see what happens. So there is no guarantee. We don't know what the future is going to hold. We don't. We guess, we speculate. You can see here these general draws, they did 4,750. Well, it was a 561 ranking. Like, can you imagine a CRS score of 561, what it takes to get that? Because remember, that low score of 561 is still underneath the 600 points that you get as a nomination. So people from 561 to 599 don't have a nomination from a province. They're doing it on human capital alone, or job offers, or French speaking ability. So that is the world we're in right now. It's so competitive. So if you're fortunate and you just happen to be one of the STEM people, let's say, that get a draw at 41, guess what's going to happen in 2 weeks if they do another draw with 2,000 people here? I can guarantee that that round of invitation is going to go up. So this is what you have to take into consideration, especially with people who say, oh, I'm just going to do it myself. It's all good. There's all the information online. It is so easy to miss things. I know because of these right here. This is why I know how difficult it is for people. It's these consultations. It's the fact that if I was to go into my calendar and look what I have lined up tomorrow, it is chock full of consultations with people who have run into a problem, have got their application rejected, have received a procedural fairness letter. And do they go online and post how easy express entry is and how glorious it is and how everything is so easy? No, not when you get your application rejected. You feel dumb. You feel like, well, why is it working out for these other people? And they make it sound so easy. And then you start to feel, well, maybe I'm not smart enough. Well, that's garbage. The reality is so many people, way more people than you could ever imagine, struggle, get their application rejected for small little things. Sometimes it's big things. But most of the time, it's just little things that you never even knew were a problem until you get that dreaded day where they say, we're returning your application because it's incomplete, or we're refusing your application because you haven't properly proved your work history, which is a huge one. Work history is massive. And so when they return your application, you're back in the pool. And if you're back in the pool, well, and your score was just at that round of invitation level, maybe it never comes back to that. And it just keeps going up and up. And those who have been around long enough know it. So if you get one of those golden tickets and you received one of those invitations to apply, you cannot under any circumstance take this lightly. You need to use every resource and tool at your disposal to make sure the application that you're preparing and submitting is done correct. Do not trust your representative, no matter whether they're a lawyer or a consultant, to submit your application unless you have had a chance to review everything. Mistakes happen all the time, especially when you've got a consultant who files your application, doesn't even let you see what they're submitting, and the little assistant that they hire who knows less about express entry than you, who the consultant hires to file the application, screws it all up and submits it. Guess what happens? What recourse do you have when it gets rejected? Very little. And that's why I strongly, strongly encourage people to consider subscribing to the course, because the course right here, it's the thing that educates you. And if you choose to hire someone, then great, that's totally fine. But this will teach you exactly what you need to do. It will walk you through every aspect of the process so that you know what it's supposed to look like. And so when you've got a representative that's telling you something that just isn't right, you can catch that BS and you can fire them before they go and submit your application, and then you are left with nothing. So strongly encourage you guys to consider doing that. Okay, let's look at some other questions that we have here. But Aniela, thanks so much for giving me a shout out. Okay, Henry says, will there be another STEM this year? Doubtful that there would be another STEM this year, given how big that one was, but anything is possible. Okay, Nalini says, it was created to combat COVID-19 and any science bachelor's degree was accepted to qualify. Would that make me qualified for the healthcare draw? Okay, that's a great question. So let's dive in here and let's once again look at these ministerial instructions and let's look at a healthcare draw. So healthcare, the last draw they did, 3,600 went down to 431. Okay, so if we hit this and we open this up, you can see that there are ministerial instructions here. These are the actual orders, that the minister, this minister right here, produces. That he's the one who pulls the trigger on these draws. And here is the full text. And if you go down here, it all comes down. So this is for you. This is for you, Nalini. When you're going through this process, this is how you figure out if you qualify under healthcare. You have to have worked for at least 6 months in the past 3 years, full-time, skilled work paid in one of these NOC codes. So you just go through them, check them out. They're all here. You can review them, each of the occupations on here. Okay. You can see nursing coordinators and supervisors, nurse practitioners are here, physician assistants, licensed practical nurses. Maybe one of these other ones might fit for you. Maybe that's the case, right? So take a look and see. There's nurses' aides and orderlies and patient service associates that are also in here. So when you're going through the process of trying to figure whether or not you might benefit from one of the targeted draws, it all comes down to your occupation. And in the course, I provide detailed documentation and tools and resources to help you choose your right NOC code too. Okay, May says, I have a postgrad work permit in Quebec that will expire in 2024 with 2 years experience. What can I do to get my PR? Well, book a consultation. That's what I recommend you do. And we can look at it and discuss it. Now, I just flew out to Quebec last month and gave a presentation on this exact issue to a large extent, people that are in Quebec looking for express entry pathways and what needs to happen. And so your work experience still counts even if it was completed in Quebec, but you must demonstrate to participate in any of the federal economic programs for permanent residents. You must demonstrate an intention to reside outside the province of Quebec. And so I recommend you book a consult. Let's see what's next here. Oh yes, sorry, Henry. Yes, Nigeria, not Niger. That's right. Okay. Let's see what else we have here. Aniela with the thumbs up. That's great. I'm just going through to see if there's any other things. Okay. Adil, I want to join your express entry free course. There's no free course, my friend. The free course is exactly this. So this is where questions can be asked, and I answer these questions freely. Let's see here. Shildon says, hello, Mark. Just dropping by to say hello. Your courses and consultation have been very helpful. Cheers from Manitoba. That's awesome. Thank you so much, Shildon, for connecting in. So good to hear from you again. Like I said, I just love when past students connect in. Okay. All right, let's finish off with Abdel here, or Abdi, and then we'll wrap it up. So it's a bigger question over on Facebook. He says, thanks a lot for your beneficial live. I'm intending to get married and I'm planning to submit my express entry profile. Given the fact that my future spouse doesn't have any experience and has only a secondary diploma, shall I delay marriage or marry and do not include my spouse unaccompanied? This is something 100% Abdi that you want to book a consult to discuss. Ultimately, it all comes down to your CRS score. And if it looks like not including her is the only way that you can rank high enough, then sometimes I would consider it. But the reality is, in most cases, if you're outside of Canada, even without French, you may still not be ranking high enough, even whether you include your spouse or not. So I really don't like to do that. And I really like to try to avoid it at all costs. But I recommend you book a consult, Abdi, and the link is in the description below, wherever you're watching. There should be in the Facebook group, and then we can chat about that. Jatender, ONP Tech Draw at 460. It's hard to know. It's hard to know, possibly. Elizabeth, hey, good to see you. You're very welcome, Elizabeth. She says, thanks for all the information. Catherine says, does French have to be my first or second language to be qualified for French EE Draw? No, it doesn't have to be your primary occupation. It can be secondary. Thanks so much. Bethlehem says, Adil, it's not free, but it's worth every penny. So helpful. Thank you so much. Once again, that's just so kind of you guys. Okay, Bobby says, what's the chance for 495 eligible for FSW CEC? It's going to be tough. You know, it all comes down to how frequently they do draws, right? Because the longer they have a delay between the rounds of invitations, the more people pile in with higher human capital. But if they do multiple draws, like in a row, then it has the ability to drop the CRS score down. So Bobby, it's possible, especially as, you know, Minister Miller does very little to transition postgrad work permit holders into PR. And remember, he specifically said, those of you who are eligible for the 18-month postgrad extension can submit your applications this year. But as of December 31st, they're not going to extend another one next year. So you guys are basically hitting the wall. If you don't qualify for permanent residence, then Minister Miller says, basically, we don't want you. You're going to have to go home, which breaks my heart because I know what you guys have sacrificed to be here. And this is just another example of why it's so important to be strategic in what you do. If the options are slipping away and you're not sure what to do, no amount of searching the internet is going to give you any ideas or any help. That's part of the reason why we do so many consultations. It's to help people to strategize what options are legitimately out there for them. And the reality is, in some cases, I tell people, I say, look, I'm so sorry, but you have no options. And I'd rather people hear that in the course of their consultation, that they have no opportunities or no options, so that they can then start to plan their future life, versus continuing to throw money at people saying, help me, save me, you know, when there is no pathways forward. And sometimes people have to realize that because of how things have played out, because of the decisions of First Minister, Minister Fraser, extolling how important you are, and continuing Minister Mendicino, who's the even former Minister of Immigration, their path of extending 8-month postgrad work permits, they really have created this massive bottleneck where now Minister Miller has to be the bad guy. And he's now clearly stating that there's no guarantee for PR. And those of you, and I would wager that it's going to be as high as almost 75% of the postgrad work permit holders that are not going to have a pathway to permanent residence and will simply need to go home. So with our consultations that we offer with Alicia, myself, and Igor, we can strategize with you. We can help to assess things and to maybe give you ideas and suggestions on things you hadn't considered. All right. Okay, Tiffany says, I have 2 Canadian half siblings. However, as our shared parent was not married to their mom, my dad's name was not on their birth certificate. How can I prove sibling relationship? That's going to be tough, Tiffany. It's going to be tough. You have to be creative. You have to look at other alternatives. Sometimes even paternity tests are needed. But I recommend you book a consult, Tiffany, and we can look at that and try to see if there's a pathway forward. But I get it. It's not easy. It's in many respects, it's similar to individuals who are applying for express entry. They're really excited. They know they've got the comprehensive ranking system score that they need, but they can't prove their education because maybe the school burned down. They can't prove work history because the company that they were working with and where they gained the experience has shut down, and there's no one to issue a letter. And they maybe were paid in cash, right? And IRCC is ruthless. They basically say, well, that's not our problem. Your obligation is to prove it. And if you can't, there's 5,000 other people that are willing to step into your shoes. Okay. Yeah, so Adil, this isn't something that I can really answer in the course of this. We're really focused on express entry, so I can't answer in terms of NCAs. I recommend, actually, if you want some guidance and direction on that, I recommend that you book a consult with Igor, because he literally went through that whole process. He's just wrapping up his articles with the firm. He was already a lawyer, master's degree in law before he ever came to Canada, and he's just finishing up his consults right now. That's my mother trying to call me. We'll have to call her back in just a little bit. But yeah, so I recommend a deal that you book a consult with Igor, and he can answer those questions. Okay. And Nalini, I know you've got a lot of questions. I recommend you book a consult as well. And we can dive into some of these issues you're addressing. Okay. Okay, let's try to get some new people here before we wrap up. Benny says, hey, Mark, thanks for the amazing work. If my spouse has good English scores and average French scores, will she be able to qualify for the French Express Entry Draw using French language as secondary language? So remember, when it comes to French, it's okay to use it as secondary as long as it hits the threshold. And if you look at the rounds of invitations and you look at the ministerial instructions, they specifically explain what is required to meet that specific targeted draw. So if we go to, let's pick a French here, let's highlight it and let's take a look at it. Few people actually do this. This is the actual ministerial instruction. So you can see rounds of invitations. It talks about the invitations issued. It talks about the lowest rank score. And then if you look here, it shows the full text. So definition, express entry, group ranking, invitation, category, French language proficiency, and then you can see to be a member of the category, their French language proficiency was assessed on a language test, okay, which is, the TCF or TEF, and they were assessed at a level 7 or higher in all language skill areas according to the benchmark. So in order to get through this targeted draw, it doesn't matter if English is the first, as long as the second hits this level 7 or higher. So that is the answer to that one. Okay, let's see what's next here. Yes. Okay, Ross says, it's been 2 months and 4 days since I submitted my application and no update since then, not even a biometric instruction letter. Very common. Processing times are 5+ months. Not unusual at all. I wouldn't be concerned about that at all. Okay, Samrat. Hey, Samrat. Thanks for connecting in. He says, hello, Mark. How are you? I'm joining after a long time. Finally took my final step and got my citizenship. Oh. Okay. We'll give Samrat a little bit of music and some hype. So very cool. Good for you, my friend. I'm so grateful for the opportunity that I had to be involved in your journey. Just love it when you guys reconnect. Okay. Okay, Bobby, I'll finish off with you and then we'll move forward. So as an employer has agreed to provide me with an engineering position, however, the employer doesn't have an LMIA. Isn't mechanical engineering and LMIA exempt in BC? Also, my permit expires in January. No. And here's something I want to point out to you guys here. In addition to everything, all the other resources and tools we have, I have the Canadian Immigration Podcast, which you can also access in the description here. And Alicia and I, all the way back to episode 100 that we started earlier this year. Episode 100 goes through the process. And actually, I think it was, let's see here. I'm going to keep backtracking because we've got so many episodes. Episode 100 was the very start of our business immigration series. And looks like it got to go one more. We've done so many episodes. I strongly encourage you to look at, to tune in to the podcast and listen to these episodes. You guys are commuting. It's a perfect opportunity. You can find it on iTunes. It's pretty easy to locate it. So if you go iTunes, Canadian Immigration Podcast, you can pull it up on Apple. You can pull it up on Spotify. Wherever you want to listen to the Canadian Immigration Podcast, you can find it. But this will go through, there's a series of episodes that talk about how LMIAs work. So in short, in answer to your question, no, that the employer, absolutely the employer needs to apply for a labor market impact assessment for you. And no, mechanical engineering isn't LMI exempt in BC. There are certain work permit categories that, because of international treaties that Canada has, or under the International Mobility Program, depending on a number of different factors, there might be a program that fits. But there is no rule that LMIAs in BC are not required for mechanical engineers. And yeah, permit expiring in January, your employer needs to apply for a labor market impact assessment, but time is very close to being out for you, Bobby. Okay, Ho says, do these draws count toward 2024 quota? Well, yeah, they will, because the quota is based on people who actually land as permanent residents and not people who are granted an invitation to apply, which is all that you're seeing right there. Okay? All right. Letitia, great to see you. Thank you, everybody. I am going to turn on the music. I'm going to turn it on. I'm going to wrap it up. All right. I've got family wondering, Mark, where are you? Why are you still in your office? We have things going on that we need you to do. So because of that, I have to draw this to a close. But I'll be honest, you guys, I love doing this stuff. I absolutely love it. And, when immigration does things like this, the crazy December, rounds of invitations, it makes life interesting. Now, the suspense that it leaves for you guys, the uncertainty, that's why I'm here, to try to clarify it. I wish that every single person who applied for express entry would take the time to actually subscribe and go through the course and benefit from everything that's in here, because it is just chock full of so much that can help people avoid all of those things that result in them basically losing their opportunity of immigrating to Canada. And never before has there been often, one chance, and you just don't get a second chance. So thanks so much, everybody. And thanks to you, Catherine, as well. And we will wrap it up. So thanks a lot.